You were born in 1968, the year of his first essay, which propelled him in a kind of a different position. What are your first memories of Andrei Dmitrich, of your grandfather?
Well, I think, first of all, he propelled himself in that direction before my birth in 1968. I think his work on the nuclear project already spurred him into the sense of responsibility for what he's been creating. And 1963 already culminated in the Moscow Treaty, the partial ban of the nuclear testing. But prior to that, I think there was a lot of confrontation, actually, with the Soviet leaders. But they had huge respect for my grandfather at the time, so they eventually took his position and decided to go ahead with the agreements and treaty with the United States, the other major nuclear power. As far as my childhood memories, until 1971, we lived on and off at my grandfather's apartment in Shukinska in Moscow, where my aunt still lives. But my memories up to that point are a bit hazy, so I was like 3 years old. Mm-hmm. I do remember him at his dacha a lot, so we spent summers there, and it was actually a very comfortable house with all the city dwelling amenities. So we went there during autumn and winter holidays as well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And my grandfather liked to draw with me because we are both left-handed people. So, and he taught me his tricks of using both hands simultaneously and writing in two directions. And he liked to read poems. There were a few of his favorite children's poems, and then we would illustrate them together. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think he was, even at the age of 4 or 5, I could notice he was not a very practical person. So when I was little, I always made sure that some other responsible adult was around, otherwise I felt that the two children left together.
So you were drawing a lot with him?
He really liked doodling, yes. Mm-hmm. Even later on, when I was already high school student and university student, we'd still do like math puzzles and physics problems mm-hmm. Alongside with doodling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How was he as a grandfather?
Well, in general, he was, first of all, a very kind person, always very measured in his responses and very considerate. But I remember always being impressed by how erudite he was. Any book that I'd be reading, he knew. And I said, "Oh, really? You read it?" He said, "No, I didn't, but I know what it is about." I think his reading was very much focused on physics books. And mm-hmm. He had a few niches of literature that he really enjoyed. And I think he went back to looking at those pieces of reading that were his favorite, like Pushkin, for example. Mm-hmm. But I think he mostly focused on reading scientific papers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Was he working hard? Kind of workaholic?
He was a workaholic, definitely. I think in terms of his scientific work, he slowed down because of other commitments when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. My mother remembers that he was always at his desk as she was growing up, and they would always tiptoe around his desk, and her mother would say, "Papa is working, mm-hmm. quiet."
So when he got the Nobel Peace Prize, you were 7 years old, right?
That's right, yes.
Do you remember that moment? Can you describe?
Yes, I do remember, actually, because the Nobel Prizes are announced a bit earlier than they are awarded. And so it was an autumn morning. My mom was taking me to school, and she was quite excited. She said, "Grandfather won this Nobel Prize." And I had no idea what it was. So, but I knew what people were awarded prizes for by watching the Soviet TV. So I said, "Oh, is it because he's always saying the Soviet Union is so great and the work of Brezhnev is so great?" And my mother was very embarrassed by that. She blushed and said, "No, it's actually the opposite, but please be quiet." And after that, I was continuously reminded to keep quiet.
Mm-hmm. You were purposely told to keep quiet about certain things.
Yeah, so I think at that age, and I think that was the point of realization that actually what my grandfather was doing was not in agreement with the official Soviet line. And so, but then it became more apparent. I learned to read, and I could read things that were lying around the dacha, and he had boxes of correspondence from this Helsinki group, and a lot of people all over the Soviet Union would write to him, and oftentimes they'd say just academician Sakharov, Moscow, and many letters would reach him, and many letters were accounts of people who felt they were persecuted for some very minor things quite often.
And how did he react to getting the Nobel Prize? You noticed anything? Or he just continued to be the same as before?
Well, he was very busy during that period. He was very much in demand and had lots and lots of meetings. So I remember lots of people coming to the dacha, like Chelidze and Tverdohlebov visited quite often, and lots of other people. So it was always a very, very intense rhythm of his life and his commitments. But I think when his Nobel Prize was actually awarded physically, he was in Lithuania. Wasn't he at the trial of Kovalyov?